The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Yet. Today's world teems with innovation. The nexus of hardware, software, and human ingenuity promises a revolution in possibilities. What does tomorrow look like? Witness Future Proof.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Season 2 of Future Proof. Today, we're going to talk about business intelligence portals. Your host, Eric Kavanagh here, of course. We're going to learn from a company called Metric Insights. We'll hear from Marius Moskovich and Mike Smitherman of Metric, who are going to tell us how a BI portal works. So business intelligence refers to software used to glean insights from data. It's an industry 25, 30 years in the making. All the big guys are involved, of course, IBM, SAP, Oracle, all these companies have BI tools, many of them acquired over the years, but there are newer tools too, like Looker, for example, just bought by Google not long ago. Tableau, bought by Salesforce, very powerful tool. Qlik has some cool technology in that space. Lots of companies have business intelligence software. So the question is, for large organizations, how do you get a strategic view of all your information assets? How can you get the big picture and really understand what's happening out there? It's a pretty complicated game. And so we're going to hear from Metric Insights all about a BI portal and how that can help companies really stay on top of the information and the insights that they have. Here we go. So good stuff. Marius, take it away.
Eric, hello everyone. So let's see, my screen
Yep, I see it. Looks good.
All right. Well, so thank you for that, all that context. So I'll give you kind of a little bit of an overview from our perspective, the thing that what justifies a BI portal, and what does it do at a high level, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mike Smitherman, who is going to give you a demo so you can see what our BI portal looks like. So with that in mind, I wanted to start with a premise that really, for all of us, our BI systems tend to be a mess. And Eric was talking about that path, creating that path for your users. Really, it's the case if you look at most organizations, and we've talked to many of our customers about this, they'll find that perhaps 10, maybe 20% of the content in their environment is actively used. The rest of the stuff is things that were created a year or two ago, fall into disrepair. It's not uncommon to see a situation when there's 3 or 4 or 5 different versions of the exact same dashboard that has been created out there because there have been different authors, or there was a slightly different purpose for the dashboard where it was retooled, but then now there's what appears to most users to be like duplicate content. And if you think about that, instead of having, if let's say only 10% of the content in your BI system is actually actively used, that means that for a typical user, when they're going in and they're looking for something, 90% of what they find is not useful, right? So that instead of having that clear path to them to get to the content, that path is littered with these huge boulders, and they've got to climb over them and navigate through it, and it's an exhausting process to find what you need and know what you can trust. And it gets sort of worse and worse every day, because in most organizations, it's much, much easier to add new content than it is to remove. If you consider it, to add new content, all you have to do is bring up a dashboard, make a change, do file, save as, rename it, and now you've got a new dashboard. To remove something, you've got to have a meeting with a group of people to figure out, is this really something that is obsolete? Maybe it's not being used now, but maybe it'll be used in the future. How can I be sure about that? And human tendency for most analysts is to really resist removing things, especially when they're not sure who created that and is it still useful in some way. So for that reason, there's this sort of gravitational pull towards entropy, where more and more clutter is generated in your BI environment. And that issue is really exacerbated further by the fact that, as Eric mentioned, most organizations today have multiple BI tools, right? Gone are the days where a centralized BI team made all the purchasing decisions for most organizations. It's usually the case that there are various satellite groups. Each of them has got their own set of SaaS products. Those have BI tools within them. They maybe have selected their own BI technologies, their own data marts out there. So it is the case that this path that's there for the users looks more like a maze with mostly dead ends. right? Where you not only have to figure out like which technology am I using. I know we use both MicroStrategy and Tableau. Is this a MicroStrategy or a Tableau report? You not only have to do that, but you also have to, once you figure it out, the tool, then go find the particular report that you want within that tool and know that you can trust it. And so that siloed approach, it just creates a whole new layer of complexity for the casual business user that has maybe 1, 2, 3 minutes to really look at analytics and needs to get to what they need to find and take action on it very, very quickly. So the end result, right? What happens when you have all these different systems, all of this clutter, all of this, a tremendous amount of content that's not necessarily being actively used, is that users become overwhelmed. So that end user, that business user who only has a few minutes a day to spend on analytics, instead of spending that day, really that time in valuable analysis, thoughtfully looking at the things that are going to make a difference for them, they are instead spending most of that time looking and feeling overwhelmed with the content that's there because they can't find what they want. Or if they do find something, they're not sure if they can trust it. Like they're saying, just Eric said, I know there's these 2 dashboards and they're showing slightly different information. I'm not sure, like which one of these is correct, right? And that completely undermines the trust that they have in business intelligence and the analytics that are there. And as soon as that happens, likely not to come back and look at anything because they just throw their hands up and say, well, I can't trust any of this, so I'm just going to make a gut level decision. And that lack of trust basically then drives low usage and perpetuates a lower engagement cycle. So it's not uncommon to look at license utilization across BI tools and find, most organizations, people find maybe 50%, maybe less of the licenses that they purchased for their users are actively used, and the rest are sort of going out there unused, where people are not looking at analytics at all. And that's all because of this factor, that the consumption model just doesn't fit how people really want to take and consume this information. And as a result of all that, then you as a BI team leader, you're stuck with a paradigm where it's very hard to show ROI for the significant BI investment that you've made. And this is, I think, a problem that has become even more serious now in the COVID era, where budgets are getting tighter. There's more and more scrutiny around how each BI team is spending their money, and every line item in a budget. Not unusual for many of our customers are telling us today when they do rebudgeting for their BI teams, they are zeroing everything out, and everything has to be rejustified. Every resource has to be rejustified. Every technology investment has to be rejustified from scratch. It makes it that much harder as a BI analyst, as a BI leader rather, to make that justification happen if you are in fact have low utilization. So how can BI portals address this issue? Well, there's 4 pillars to this technology providing a solution. The first thing is, as Eric mentioned, pulling everything in one place. Addressing that problem of if there's 17 places where I need to go for the information, it not only is it not governed, but it's unmanageable. So a BI portal provides a single pane of glass through which you can access all the content, irrespective of what technology is being used and where that particular report resides, in the cloud, on-premise, wherever it is. And doing so in a future-proof manner, where if you decide tomorrow to add another technology into your BI stack, you can do so and you can just fold it in nicely into the same architecture. The second thing that a BI portal does is it allows for distribution of content to users. So if all you do is create a portal, create a solution where people have to go to find the content, if they've got to go to one place rather than 17, well, you've made it a little bit easier, but really you haven't solved the problem that's fundamental, the problem where users just don't have enough time to consume the content. What you want to do is you want to be able to connect them to the content that matters most to them in such a way that every day they get up in the morning, they open their email, and then they're going to see the 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 reports that matter most to them in their email, and they can just scan them in a few minutes, be up to speed. If there's something that looks alarming, click on that and then go and do the in-depth analysis. But be up to speed with very little effort. So thereby deliver a lot of engagement, even though there's not a lot of time that users have to spend with the analytics. The third critical component of what a BI portal needs to do is to uncover critical changes. So if there are 20 dashboards that I may want to look at any given day because I'm interested in, maybe different parts of the business, and there's different ways of slicing that information, what I need as a busy end user is a solution that doesn't make me go in and open every one of those dashboards. And for each dashboard, change filter values and explore to figure out what is actually going on, because that's never going to work. I don't have the time for that. What I want as a business user is for the right analytic to come to me. The best insights should find me. So I would want to say, tell me which of these 20 dashboards should I look at today based on the fundamental changes in the data, right? And think about that. If you look at a dashboard today, it might be useful to you. You might learn something from it. If you look at that same dashboard tomorrow, if the data hasn't changed in a fundamental way, if the trend is exactly the same as it was yesterday, that is a waste of time. You only want to look at an analytic when it's showing you something new. So the BI portal solution that you put in place needs to be able to surface or bubble up those specific changes that require action from your users. And then finally, Eric mentioned that we need to be able to have a way to monitor usage and manage the overall cost of your BI stack. So understand across all the different tool portfolio that you have, what is the usage? Which reports are being used and which are not? You want to be able to so that allows you to basically, weed the garden, right? To take out the content that is not used, to figure out where's there really ROI within the tools case you're using, and where does it not exist, where you might want to make some changes. And then justify that ongoing investment that you're making, both at a level of tool as well as for the analysts. What are analysts spending time on? Which reports are they developing? Are the reports that they're developing actually generating engagement, or are they developing things that, well, they look interesting and they're beautiful visualizations, but in fact, when you look at what the business is using, there's not a lot of value that's being generated. So being able to drive that process through the usage statistics that come from the BI portal is a critical pillar of the solution. So with that in mind, let me hand it over to Mike, who is going to then show you an example of all of these concepts in terms of how we at Metric Insights address these particular issues.
All right, and folks, don't be shy. Send your questions in at any time. We'll queue them up for the Q&A. Take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Marius. Thanks, Eric. So yeah, let me spend a few minutes taking you through Metric Insights solution to the BI portal that Marius and Eric have been talking about. We're going to cover those 4 pillars that Marius touched on. So the organization, the distribution, the uncovering of critical events, and then tying it all back to understanding how users are using content within your organization. And so what you're looking at on the screen is the Metric Insights, what we call catalog or library, for want of a better word. And this is looking at an instance of Metric Insights that is plugged into a number of different data sources that Marius was talking about. So really anywhere in your organization that has content that's important for your business users. And so each of these tiles that you're seeing on the screen is essentially coming through a plugin to a particular tool and is publishing a piece of content that is relevant and interesting to your users. And so that can be obviously the BI tools like Tableau or Power BI or Click or Cognos. Could be data coming from databases or reports from operational systems. Again, the concept is that we can connect to any tool and then allow you to publish the relevant content through. And if we take a look at a few of these tiles, we can talk about what's actually happening here. So, for example, we may have published a Tableau workbook, a Tableau dashboard that we want to make available to users. If I click on that tile, what our plugins are doing, a number of things. So Eric mentioned the concept of metadata. So through our plugin, we're able to recognize what content exists on these underlying systems. And when they get published, we pull in a level of metadata, obviously the report name, when it was last updated. We even capture preview images here that gives the users sort of a visual representation of what the dashboard looks like each time it updates. And then if a user clicks through into that particular piece of content, we're taking them to the live dashboard that they've selected, in this case Tableau, embedded within the Metric Insights portal. To the user, they didn't have to know necessarily where this piece of content exists. They didn't have to know necessarily that it's a Tableau dashboard. They're seeing a visualization that they were interested in and relevant to them. And they have the full functionality then of what they would get if they found it in the underlying tool. So publishing content from these tools, again, whether it's Tableau or whether I'm drilling into a Power BI piece of content, a Power BI dashboard, to the user, they get this consistent experience. They don't have to know where the content comes from or what format it's baked in. So we can publish content from our different analytics tools. In order to get this holistic view, we also need to include any other relevant content within the portal. And that may be in the form of, say, documents. There may be, PDFs or Word documents out there that have relevant information. We can publish those as tiles as well. We can't get away from spreadsheets. There's probably workbooks and spreadsheets out there that have relevant information. We need to make sure we're including those as well. We can even publish native reports within Metric Insights, so we can actually connect to databases and pull in data and visualize it directly within the tool as well. And then finally, and Marius spoke about this, making the data as relevant as possible to the users and as easy to consume for the users. We also have this concept of metric tiles as well. And they're identifiable by the ones that you see the numbers on here. Through our plugins, we can pull out these high-level KPIs that track the relevant metrics that they're interested in. We track those over time, could be every hour, every day, every week, every month, by different areas of the business. So in this case, I'm looking at sales by our different regions. And in the guise of sort of bubbling up what's important to the users, the Metric Insights platform is actually tracking how these metrics are changing over time. We look for highs, lows in the data. We run moving averages against the data set. We look for statistical outliers within the data that may indicate, across the different dimensionality that you have, areas that may require attention from your users. And we can actually, as you'll see a bit later on, alert users to these particular issues. So, we find statistically significant values, highs or lows in the data, or even allow users to create their own alert rules against the data so that the system can start to tell them when to go and look at a piece of content rather than, as Marius said, relying on them to come in every day and figure out what's going on. So the sort of first step in solving this issue through a BI portal is collecting all this content that's relevant from your different systems, publishing it in a way that makes sense for the users, organizing it in a way that makes sense for the users. By taking these tiles and putting them in a common hierarchy, it makes it easier for the users to be able to navigate to what they're interested in. And also provides this search paradigms where a user can come in, enter a particular search term that users are looking for and common assets that it finds. And if I run that search, it's going across our catalog of content, across the different tools, ranking results as you would expect from a search engine, but a search engine for my data and my content in this scenario. Step one, again, is cataloging this content, getting it all in one place so users don't have to play this game of hide and seek. Now, what does this look like from an end user perspective? So we published our content. I'm now logged into the portal here as Avery, a typical end user. She's actually responsible for sort of a sales region And immediately you'll see she's getting a restricted view of the world here. So based on her permissions and her role within the organization, immediately she's getting access to a subset of that catalog that we've been talking about. So that certain categories of information are relevant to her, certain tiles within those categories are relevant to her, even certain slices of the data. In this case, she may be responsible for a particular region. And not only that, when she opens content, we may want to pre-filter that content to her particular region in this case. And so I mentioned briefly this concept of bookmarks when I first opened this dashboard. When a user opens a piece of content, we can pre-filter that content directly to the region, in this case, that she's responsible for. And again, save her time every time having to navigate through filters and understand what it is she needs to see. So to Marius's point, when you've got a couple of minutes every day to look at data, you want to make it as relevant as possible. Within her catalog as well, we want to add as much context to the data as well. We want to communicate anything out to the users, and we can do that through the concept of these announcements at the top. So we've looked at this, this organization, this catalog, this library view of content, getting everything into one place. But Marius also spoke about the fact that even if you do this, relying on users to come in every day and access and find this content is challenging. And so we also need different ways of distributing this content out to them. And the Metric Insights portal has a number of ways of doing that. The first is staying in the portal itself, but creating this concept of what we call sort of landing pages or portal pages that bring together the most relevant content. So as I mentioned before, Avery is in here as sort of a sales manager in our demo world. And there may be content from multiple systems that she is interested in tracking every day. So rather than relying on us to bring those tiles into the portal, we can actually publish those different pieces of content into a single page for her. So in this case, I've got the metrics at the top that she's interested in. We're alerting her to any issues with those metrics. We're pulling out exceptional data that she might be interested in. And in a single page, I can give her the most relevant content that she needs to look at every day so she doesn't have to hunt and find it. And whether that's sort of an example like this, or bubbling up perhaps critical metrics to your executive team, pull these out of your dashboards, put them on a page for the management team so it's in their face, they don't have to go and hunt for this stuff every day. And if they want, drill into the underlying details to figure out what's going on. Another way we can distribute content is obviously via email as well. But one example is using this concept of what we call favorites. So as a user, I can basically curate at any point in time the content that I'm most interested in and that's most valuable to me. And so by dragging a tile or clicking on a star, I can create my own personal set of favorite tiles. And what that does is give me a shortcut to that content, but it also instructs Metric Insights to actually start tracking that content on my behalf and doing things like sending me a daily digest of what's important in my world. And this is an example of that. So what is the digest doing? It's looking through my favorites every day. It's telling me which metrics have moved the most since I last looked at this email. It's pulling me in a summary of the metrics that I'm interested in and alerting me to any issues that may have happened there. And it's also pulling in any dashboards that I have in my favorites, again, from potentially multiple tools that have updated since I last looked at this content. And so we don't necessarily want to send everything to the users every day. We just want to focus them in on what's changed since they last received this particular email. So let's finally touch on the concept that Marius spoke about keeping the content relevant and interesting for the users. So something that is critical in any portal solution is that we're tracking and understanding how people are engaging with content over time. And sort of the key to delivering relevant content is, as Marius mentioned, not overwhelming users with content that's just not relevant or stale or not useful. And so as a publisher of any content to the portal, I need to understand how it's being used, is it being used, and how relevant is it to my users, so that I can either promote it to them if they're not aware of it, or retire it if it's something that's not useful to them. So the Metric Insights portal is actually tracking all this engagement behind the scenes around who's accessing what and how they're interacting with all this data and all this content. And as a publisher of content, I can start to see over time what's most popular, what's increasing in popularity across my different data sources, across my different categories of content, even down to a particularly granular level. We can start to see usage patterns for the particular dashboards that we're publishing. So in this case, what this visualization is showing us, it's showing me which users or groups of users are coming in and accessing this content, every day, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And the users that you see that are sort of bouncing in and out here are coming back on a regular basis and looking at this particular dashboard. The ones that are fading out to the outer rings came in once and have never looked at it again. And so as a publisher of this particular dashboard, I can start to see who's finding this content interesting, who isn't, should I be promoting it? So understanding these usage patterns, even down to individual behavior, like what are people searching for within the portal that is finding content, so that we can use this to better understand how we structure the portal, how we tag content so that it's easily discoverable, and how we make it much easier for users to find content. And then finally, Marius spoke about the license utilization of this. As he mentioned, we often find that organizations are paying for licenses in the underlying tools for their users. And so by the fact that we're capturing all this engagement and all these statistics, we're able to understand what that license utilization is. So out of everything you're paying for a particular tool, and out of the different levels of licenses that you're investing in, who is and isn't using those tools, who isn't using their license to the fullest capacity, so that you can start to either drive engagement with these tools so that you can justify the spend, or if this particular type of tool isn't useful to certain users, then there's no point paying for them. Let's turn it off. Let's find a better way of presenting data to these users in a way that will make more sense and that will get them more engaged with it. So that's kind of the whirlwind tour, I guess, of the Metric Insights solution to the portal. And I guess to summarize at a very high level, all the content in one place, make it easily searchable, but then don't rely on users to come and find it. Make sure that you're pushing out that relevant content to people and understanding what's relevant over time. So I guess I'll hand it back to you, Eric.
I love it. Well, folks, look them up online, Metric Insights. We do archive all these webinars for later viewing. You can usually check out the archive within about 30 minutes. So kudos to GoToMeeting for that. They figured that one out. And send me an email, info@insightanalysis.com. We want to know what you want to know. We're going to have these folks on a radio show too sometime next month. So check out the DM radio schedule at dmradio.biz. And with that, we're going to bid you farewell, folks, gearing up for a great 4th of July weekend. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.